Jos 13. 24, 25. JG 11. 12-28. Geographic names. The ancient Hebrew names of many cities, mountains, and valleys have been lost, partly due to the occupation of Palestine by the Arabs for much of the time since 638 CE, but, since Arabic is the living language most closely related to Hebrew, it is possible in some instances to identify with considerable accuracy certain ancient places and sites of major events. Some common Arabic and Hebrew geographic terms that are helpful in relating places to biblical sites are given on the following page. Climatic conditions. Palestine's climate is as diversified as its topography. In the matter of some 160 kilometers 100 mi, from the Dead Sea to Mount Hermon, the contrasting extremes in altitude produce climatic conditions equivalent to those that are elsewhere spread over thousands of miles in latitude between the tropics and the Arctic. Mount Hermon is usually snow-capped mucho textoi acute miritra longo, Pelu 571 spring, rain comes in March and April. Dra 11. 14. Jo 2. 23. Zek 10. 1. Jos 5. 7. One of Palestine's great assets is the abundance of dew, especially through the rainless summer months, for without the heavy dews many of the vineyards and grazing lands would suffer greatly. Hag 1. 10. Zek 8. 12. The moisture-laden breezes blowing up from the Mediterranean and down from Mount Hermon account for much of the dew in Palestine. PS 133. 3. In certain areas the dew at night is so heavy that enough moisture is recovered by the vegetation to compensate for the losses during the heat of the day. Compare Job 29. 19. Of particular importance is the dew in the Negev and uplands of Gilead where rainfall is minimal. See dew. Plants and animals. The tremendous variety of trees, shrubs, and plants found in this small area of the earth has been a source of amazement among botanists, one of whom estimates that there are about 2,600 plant varieties growing there. The diversity in altitude, climate, and soil helps to account for this variety in flora, some plants being at home in the cold alpine, others in the torrid desert, and still others in the alluvial plain or the rocky plateau, each blooming and bearing seed in its season. Within comparatively short distances from one another are found hot weather palms and cold weather oaks and pines. Willows along the streams and tamarisks in the wilderness. This land is also famous for its cultivated vineyards, olive groves, fig orchards, and fields of wheat, barley, and millet. Other crops include peas, beans, lentils, eggplants, onions, and cucumbers, as well as cotton and flax. Modern visitors to this land are often disappointed unless it is springtime, when the countryside is in full bloom with its flower spectacle. For most of the year, the stony hillsides are barren and bleak. At one time, however, parts of the land were more heavily wooded than at present, lush like the Garden of Jehovah, a veritable botanical garden flowing with milk and honey, hospitable and inviting. GE 13. 10. X3. 8. New 13. 23, 24. 8. 7-9. Animal, bird, and fish life was abundant in park-like Palestine, in the past more so than today. The lion, bear, wild boar, and hippopotamus are no longer present, but other wildlife that may be found include wolves, wild boars, wildcats, jackals, hares, and foxes. Domesticated animals are common. Sheep, goats, cows, horses, asses, and camels. It is estimated that there are about 85 different kinds of mammals, 350 kinds of birds, and 75 kinds of reptiles in Israel today. Resources from the ground. Besides proving to be a well-watered land capable of producing an abundance of foodstuffs, Palestine's mountains contained useful iron and copper ores. 8. 9. Gold, silver, tin, and lead had to be imported, but there were large deposits of salt, and in the Jordan Valley there were beds of clay for the brick, pottery, and foundry industries. 1 Kai 7. 46. Excellent limestone for the building trade was quarried, and there were outcroppings of dark basalt valued for its hardness and fine-grained texture. Palu shortened form of Pelea, meaning Jah has acted wonderfully. Second named son of Jacob's firstborn Reuben. GE 46. 9. Geographic terms: Arabic, Hebrew, English. Anon, spring, Enot, PL. Fountain, Bait, Bedhouse, Bikar, Bukati, Valley, Plain, Becker, PL. Berbi apostrophe Welderket, Berekati, Pool, Bury, Tower, Darbrode, Wadibet, Sandy Height, Deer Convent, Monastery, Meklo, Plangay, GE Valley, Gore Depression, Givati Hill, Givot T, PL. Jebel Harmoudin, Kafkafar Village, Kerbet, Horvati, Ruin, Mayal, Ascent, Midal, Middletown, Mayan Spring, Mayphrase Bay, Gulf Mogami, Arati, Kavanaravinak, Mountain, Parthenby, Prophet, Kalara, Fortress, Khan, Kareen, Peaklet. Hornkriati, Krati Town, Casa Castle, Paliso, Textoy, Acute Muritra, Longo, Palutes 572, 1ch5. 3. Palu founded the family of Palutes in the tribe of Reuben. X6. 14. New 26. 5. He is possibly the same son of Reuben called Pileth at Numbers 16. 1. Palutes Palu Middle.ites of belonging to Palu. A Reubenite family descended from Palu. New 26. 5. Palm Tree Heb. Tar Middle.march, to merge AG4. 5. GR. Phoenix. The date palm phoenix Nactylifera, though now found only in certain sections, was once abundant in Palestine and apparently was as characteristic of that area as it was in the Nile Valley of Egypt. Following the second destruction of Jerusalem, Roman Emperor Vespasian had numerous coins minted bearing the figure of a weeping woman seated beneath a palm tree with the inscription Judea Capta. Picture, Volume 2, p. 751. Palms are associated with oases and are a welcome sight to desert travelers, as were the 70 palm trees growing beside the 12 springs of water at Elim, the second stop of the marching Israelites after their crossing the Red Sea. X15. 27. New 33. 9. In Bible times palms flourished on the coast of the Sea of Galilee. The Jewish War, 3, 516, 517 x. 8 as well as along the lower reaches of the hot Jordan Valley, and they were particularly abundant around Engedi. Jewish Antiquities, 9, 7i, 2 and Jericho, called the City of the Palm Trees. The 34. 3. JG1. 16. 3. 13. 2ch28. 15. They also grew in the highlands, as did Deborah's palm tree in the mountainous region of Ephraim. JG4. 5. That they grew around Jerusalem is evident from the use made of their fronds at the festival of Booths. 23. 40. NE 8. 15 and also at the time of Jesus' entry into the city. Jo 12. 12, 13 Tamar, one of Solomon's cities, was named for the palm tree. 1 Kai 9. 17. 18 The land of Tyre and Sidon also later received the name Phoenicia, likely from a root meaning palm tree from their Greek Phoenix. Ac 11. 19. 15. 3, as possibly did the city of Phoenix on the island of Crete. Ac 27. 12. The tall, stately palm, with its straight, uniform trunk rising up to 30 meters, 100 feet and cresting with a plume of long feathery fronds, makes a graceful silhouette of unique beauty. Girls must have been pleased to receive the name Tamar, as did Judah's daughter-in-law Ge 38. 6. Absalom's sister Tusa 13. 1, and also his daughter, who was described as a woman most beautiful in appearance. Tusa 14. 27 The Shulamite maiden's stature was likened to that of a palm tree, and her breasts to its clusters. K 7. 7. 8 The spiral arrangement of its wood fibers also makes it a tree of unusual suppleness and strength. The palm tree comes to full bearing after 10 to 15 years and continues to bear for nearly 100 years, after which it gradually declines and dies toward the end of the 2nd century. The annual crop of dates grows in immense drooping clusters and is usually harvested by August-September. The Arabs say that the palm tree has as many uses as the year has days. In addition to the many uses for its fruit, the leaves are used for thatching roofs and the sides of houses, as well as for making fences, mats, baskets, and even dishes. Its fibers are used to make ropes and boat rigging. The date seeds, or kernels, are ground up and fed to the camels. Wax, sugar, oil, tannin, and resin are all obtained from the tree, and a potent drink called arak is distilled from the sap. Engraved carvings of the palm tree, with its erect form, beauty, and fruitfulness, made an appropriate decoration for the inner walls and the doors of Solomon's Temple 1 Kai 6. 29, 32, 35. 2ch3. 5 as well as for the sides of the carriages used in the temple service. 1 Kai 7. 36, 37 palm trees were seen by Ezekiel as decorating the side pillars of the gates of the visionary temple and also the inner walls and doors of the temple. As 40. 16-37. 41. 15-26 being straight and tall as well as fruitful, the palm tree was also a fitting symbol of the righteous man planted in the O Textoi Acute Muritra Longo, Perfo's 573 wife, and gave her in marriage to Paltiel. 1-25. 44 After becoming king, David demanded of Abner and Ishbosheth that Michal be returned to him. This greatly grieved Paltiel, who followed her, weeping, until Abner ordered him to go home. 2-3. 13-16. Paltite of belonging to Beth Pelet. Or, of belonging to the house of Pelet. A term used with reference to Helas, one of David's mighty men, and generally believed to refer to a native of Beth Pelet. 2-23. 8-26 in the corresponding lists at 1 Chronicles 11. 27. 27. 10. Helas is called a Pelonite. See Pelonite. Pamphylia A small Roman province on the east coast of Asia Minor visited by Paul on his first missionary tour. Though the size of the province may have varied over the years, Pamphylia is commonly viewed as having been a strip along the coastline some 120 kilometers 75 mi long and up to 50 kilometers 30 mi wide. It was bounded by the province of Lycia on the W, the Roman province of Galatia on the N, and the kingdom of Antiochus on the E. On the coast the climate of Pamphylia was hot and tropical, while it moderated as one moved to the higher elevation of the Taurus Mountains. The inhabitants are thought to have been a mixture of a native tribe with Greeks, some even suggesting Pamphylia to mean of mingled tribes or races. Liddell and Scott's Greek English Lexicon, revised by H. Jones, Oxford, 1968, p. 1295. Evidently Jews or proselytes were in the area, for on Pentecost 33 CE persons from Pamphylia were in Jerusalem and were amazed to hear the disciples speaking in their own language. Act 2. 6, 10. A number of principal cities were on or near the coast, such as the seaport town of Italia, Pergia on the Sestris Lakshmi River, and Side, where coastal pirates sold their booty and a slave market existed. From Paphos on Cyprus, Paul, Barnabas, and John Mark sailed NW across the sea and arrived at Perga in Pamphylia. It is not definitely known whether they landed at Italia and travelled on land the few miles to Perga or whether they sailed right to Perga. It is reported that in ancient times the Sestris was navigable at least as far as Perga. At this point John Mark separated from the others and returned to Jerusalem, but Paul and Barnabas went in through the mountains to Antioch in Pisidia in the province of Galatia. Act 13. 13, 14. 15. 38. 27. 5. That route was notorious for bandits. Compare to Co 11. 26. On the return trip the two Christians travelled through Pamphylia to Perga and preached there. Next they went to the port of Italia and sailed from there to Antioch in Syria. Act 14. 24-26. Pamphylia over the years was ruled by Lydia, Persia, Macedonia, and Rome. Under the Romans it was at various times united as a province with Cilicia to the E, then with Galatia, and finally with Lycia. Act 13. 13. 16. 6. 27. 5. Paper. In Bible times, a thin writing material made into sheets from strips obtained from the papyrus plant. See papyrus. The Egyptians are credited with being the first manufacturers of papyrus paper for writing purposes, using papyrus plants that then grew along the banks of the Nile River. Some archaeologists would place such paper production as far back as Abraham's time. Early Christians used papyrus paper for their letters, scrolls, and codices. It also played an important part in the production of Bible manuscripts, until it was replaced by vellum finer-grained animal skin in the 4th century CE. At 2 John 12, the apostle wrote that he would rather convey his message face-to-face than with paper and ink. Here the word paper translates the Greek word karties, which is said to mean a sheet of paper made of papyrus. Paphos, a city on the W coast of the island of Cyprus. Here Paul, after working his way across the island with Barnabas and John Mark, encountered the sorcerer Bar Jesus Elymas, who opposed their preaching o textoi acute miritra longo. Papyrus 574 Papyrus palmiddle. Pyros heb. Gomi. A large aquatic plant belonging to the sedge family. It is a tapering three-sided stem, or stalk, that grows in shallow water to a height of 2 to 6 meters, 6.5 to 20 feet, and terminates in a bush, or plume, of fine grass-like panicles. Picture, Volume 1, p. 544. The papyrus plant was used in the manufacture of various items, including a writing material. Papyrus cypress. Papyrus thrives in shallow, stagnant waters or marshes, and along the banks of slow-moving rivers, such as the Lower Nile, where it once flourished but is now nearly extinct. Billnard asked Job, will a papyrus plant grow tall without a swampy place? Job 8. 11. Issa 35. 7. The plant's stems are buoyant, and to prevent the death of the infant Moses, his mother placed him in an ark of papyrus coated with bitumen and pitch and set him adrift on the Nile River. X2. 3 large vessels for traveling long distances were also made from papyrus. Issa 18. 2. These may have been made of bundles of papyrus stems lashed together. They had narrow ends, but the beams were broad enough to support standing passengers. In 1970, Thor Heyerdahl and a group of associates traveled across thousands of miles of the Atlantic in such a craft. Use as writing material. When the Egyptians prepared papyrus for writing material, they followed a rather simple process. In gathering the stems, they prized the thick pithy part that grew under the surface of the water, because it yielded the broadest and whitest raw material. The outer rinds were peeled off, and the remaining pithy cores were cut into convenient lengths of 40 to 45 centimeters, 16 to 18 inches. Next, the cellular pith was sliced into broad, but very thin, strips. The strips were then laid out vertically on a smooth surface and allowed to overlap slightly. Another layer of papyrus strips was placed horizontally over the vertical ones. Mallets were used to beat the layers until they were bonded into a unified sheet. Then, after being dried in the sun, the sheets were trimmed to the desired size. Finally, they were smoothed and polished with pumice, shells, or ivory. This process produced a fairly durable, supple, near-white writing material that was available in many sizes and degrees of quality. The side having the horizontal strips was usually chosen for writing, although at times the reverse side was used to finish a writing. The joints of the strips served to guide the writer's hand as he wrote with a reed pen and the writing fluid made from gum, soot, and water. These papyrus sheets could be pasted along the edges and joined to make a scroll, normally consisting of about 20 sheets. Or they might be folded into leaves to form the book-like codex that became popular among the early Christians. The average scroll measured some 4 to 6 meters, 14 to 20 feet in length, though one has been preserved that is 40.5 meters, 133 feet long. The Greek word biblos originally applied to the soft pith of the papyrus plant, but was later used with reference to a book. Mount 1. 1. Mr. 12. 26. The diminutive biblion has the plural bibliae, literally meaning little books, and from this the word Bible is derived. 2t4. 13. The Phoenician city was called Byblos after it became an important center for the papyrus industry. Papyrus rolls were used widely until the beginning of the 2nd century CE, when they began to be superseded by the papyrus codex. Later, in the 4th century, the popularity of papyrus waned, and it was replaced extensively by a more durable writing material called vellum. Papyrus had one major disadvantage as a writing material in that it was not very durable. It deteriorated in a damp environment and, when stored under arid conditions, became very brittle. Until the 18th century CE, the assumption was that all ancient papyrus manuscripts had perished. However, in the late 19th century, a number of valuable biblical papyri were brought to light. O textoi acute miritra longo, Paradise 575 writings, whereas existing Persian writings go back only to about the 6th century BCE. Such derivation of the Hebrew term is only conjectural. EC 2. 5. K4. 13. The remaining use of Parmiddle.as is at Nehemiah 2. 8, where reference is made to a royal wooded park of Persian king Artaxerxes Longimanus, in the 5th century BCE. See park. The three terms Hebrew Parmiddle.des, Persian Paradisa, and Greek Parmiddle.Radamiddle.sos, however, all convey the basic idea of a beautiful park or park-like garden. The first such park was that made by man's creator, Jehovah God, in Eden. GE 2. 8, 9, 15. It is called a gan, or garden, in Hebrew, but was obviously park-like in size and nature. The Greek Septuagint appropriately uses the term Paradamiddle.sos with reference to that garden. See Eden number 1. Garden of Eden. Because of sin, Adam lost his right to live in that paradise and his opportunity to gain the right to everlasting life, which right was represented in the fruit of a divinely designated tree in the center of the garden. The Garden of Eden may have been enclosed in some way, since it was necessary to place angelic guards only at the east side thereof to prevent human entrance. GE 3. 22-24. What is the paradise that Jesus promised to the evildoer who died alongside him? Luke's account shows that an evildoer, being executed alongside Jesus Christ, spoke words in Jesus' defense and requested that Jesus remember him when he got into his kingdom. Jesus' reply was, "Truly I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise." Luke 23. 39-43. The punctuation shown in the rendering of these words must, of course, depend on the translator's understanding of the sense of Jesus' words, since no systematic punctuation was used in the original Greek text. Punctuation in the modern style did not become common until about the 9th century CE, whereas many translations place a comma before the word today and thereby give the impression that the evildoer entered paradise that same day. There is nothing in the rest of the scriptures to support this. Jesus himself was dead and in the tomb until the third day and was then resurrected as the first fruits of the resurrection. Act 10. 40. 1 Cor 15. 20. Col 1. 18. He ascended to heaven 40 days later. Joe 20. 17. Act 1. 1-3, 9. The evidence is, therefore, that Jesus' use of the word today was not to give the time of the evildoers being in paradise but, rather, to call attention to the time in which the promise was being made and during which the evildoer had shown a measure of faith in Jesus. It was a day when Jesus had been rejected and condemned by the highest-ranking religious leaders of his own people and was thereafter sentenced to die by Roman authority. He had become an object of scorn and ridicule. So the wrongdoer alongside him had shown a notable quality and commendable heart attitude in not going along with the crowd but, rather, speaking out in Jesus' behalf and expressing belief in his coming kingship. Recognizing that the emphasis is correctly placed on the time of the promises being made rather than on the time of its fulfillment, other translations, such as those in English by Rotherham and Lamsa, those in German by Reinhard and W. Michaelis, as well as the Teutonian Syriac of the 5th century CE rendered the text in a form similar to the reading of the New World Translation, quoted herein. As to the identification of the paradise of which Jesus spoke, it is clearly not synonymous with the heavenly kingdom of Christ. Earlier that day entry into that heavenly kingdom had been held out as a prospect for Jesus' faithful disciples, but on the basis of their having stuck with him in his trials, something o textoi acute miritra longo, paradise